What is the best way to wash and care for your clothes so they don't get damaged, shrink or stretch out, fade, and generally last longer? In this video, I'm going over clothing care tips and best practices, including what types of detergents to use, how to hand wash, how to store your clothing, and more. So first, let's talk about washing machine basics and general care tips. Our clothes are cleaned with a combination of water, detergent, heat, and agitation. However, heat and agitation is also what breaks down fibers and fabrics over time, causing wear, fading, and stretching out. So what we're essentially trying to do is find the sweet spot where our clothing gets clean without any extra or unnecessary damage. And we can do this in many ways. First, only wash your clothing when needed. So any underwear and undergarments should be washed after every wear. However, many of our other clothes can be worn multiple times before needing a wash, especially garments that are worn further from the skin or layered on top of other clothing, and if you're not getting especially sweaty or dirty during the day. A good habit is hanging up or laying out clothing that has been worn but doesn't need a wash yet to air out a bit. And when it comes to washing clothing, it's of course always important to check clothing care labels for washing instructions. And I will link a guide below to what all of the different symbols mean. Next, before doing laundry, you need to separate your items. I think many of us know to separate lights and dark colors, but do you also separate out heavier and more abrasive garments? Because since we want to reduce abrasion as much as possible, it's a good idea to separate out items with zippers and any very thick and sturdy fabrics like denim. And be sure to zip up zippers and button buttons, and of course, check pockets before washing. So in my house, we do a light load and a dark load every week or so, and then maybe every couple weeks, I do what I call a hard load of anything that is thick and more abrasive, basically anything that I don't want rubbing against our t-shirts and lightweight or knit fabrics. Now, if you don't have enough items or don't want to wait to do a separate load, it seems a little counterintuitive, but you can also put these more abrasive or hard items in a delicate bag, which helps prevent them from directly rubbing against the other garments in the wash. And speaking of delicate bags, they're obviously designed to protect delicate clothing, so put any machine wash items with fine fabrics or delicate construction in them. Also anything with straps that can get pulled and tangled. Bras and bralettes should always go in delicate bags because not only can the straps get caught and stretched out, but if they have hooks, those can catch on other garments. So the bags work both ways to protect your clothing. Then when loading your machine, it might seem like a good idea to save water and overload it, but your clothes won't actually clean as well, so stick to the load limits. I know people never read manuals, but your washing machine manual should actually have some important information like load size and what cycle to use. For which wash cycle length to choose, shorter is often totally fine unless you have actual dirt or other solids or heavy soiling on the fabrics. Mostly what we need to clean from our clothes is water soluble and actually removed within the first 10 minutes of washing. The agitation from the machine also releases more microplastics from synthetic fabrics, so it's good to err on shorter cycles unless your clothes are very dirty. Now, we know that washing in cold water is more sustainable, and switching from hot to cold water can save up to 9 kilowatt hours per load, which is almost a third of what the average American house uses in a whole day. Additionally, heat is also damaging to our clothes, increasing the breakdown of fibers and causing fading to dyes. And heat also damages the spandex in our clothes and reduces its ability to recover, which is the reason it's in our clothes in the first place. So if you want to keep your stretchy clothes fitting well and not losing shape, then it's a good idea to avoid heat. With that said though, heat can also help with cleaning and sanitizing. So in some cases, washing with warmer or hot water might be appropriate if you have especially dirty items. Now, when we say hot and cold water, what does that actually mean? And this is going to depend on a few things, including your machine programming and your hot water temperature settings. And unfortunately, many machines don't have exact temperature settings, so it's a rough cold, warm, hot option. Hot water is typically above roughly 55 degrees Celsius or 130 Fahrenheit, and as mentioned, is really only necessary for heavily soiled items or items that need to be sanitized, like cloth diapers, for example. Warm water is usually between roughly 30 and 40 Celsius or 90 and 110 Fahrenheit, and cold is often 15 to 25 Celsius or 60 to 70 Fahrenheit. So cold water is not actually that cold. We're not talking about almost freezing water because that just wouldn't clean well. And when you see this symbol on care labels, the number means the maximum temperature. So a 30 would mean wash on cold, and a 60 would mean wash on warm or cold, but not hot. So there is some debate and conflicting information over what is the most sustainable detergent, but in general, it's good to look for something that is biodegradable and doesn't have phosphates, chlorine bleach, brighteners, or artificial fragrance. Also, be sure to look for detergent specifically formulated for cold water, otherwise it just won't work well. And you can also look for more sustainable packaging or powders because they typically create less waste. And of course, read the detergent instructions to know what the appropriate amount to use is. I have tried some different, more sustainable detergents, and I personally like Nellie's laundry soda the best. I love the powder formula, the simple ingredients, and affordability, and I have had good results with it cleaning. And oh my gosh, please stop using fabric softeners. I have a blog post all about this, which I'll link, but they are bad for the environment, bad for your health, bad for your washing machine and dryer, and bad for your clothes. They basically cover your fabrics in a waxy, fatty film, which over time makes them less absorbent, less breathable, can stain your clothes, and also traps odors in your clothes, which often means that people end up using even more fabric softener to make their clothes smell better. They are completely unnecessary with modern fabrics, machines, and detergents. So now let's move on to the dryer. As we talked about, heat and friction make your clothes fade, stretch out, and deteriorate faster. We can literally see our clothing wearing down into lint every dryer load. So whenever you can, air drying is always going to be better for your garments. A clothes dryer is also a very energy-hungry appliance and is estimated to use approximately 12% of household energy. So switching to line drying can significantly reduce your energy footprint and save you money. And even if you can't fully air dry your clothes, partially air drying them is still a good step. So when it comes to air drying, you can use a clothesline or a folding drying rack. You can dry them inside or outside. Outside can dry things faster, but just keep in mind that direct sunlight can fade your garments. So especially for black, dark, or saturated colors, you likely don't want to have them in direct sunlight. And then delicates and sweaters should be dried flat, which we'll talk about right away. So any delicate and wool pieces should be hand washed and will be labeled as such on the care tag. Delicate clothing can easily be hand washed in a sink. The best method is to use warm water or whatever the care label says and add a bit of detergent. If you have a lot of hand wash items or a lot of very delicate fabrics such as wool or silk, then getting a mild delicate specific or fabric specific detergent can be beneficial since it's formulated for those fabrics. Then I like to let the items soak a little in the soapy water and gently squish, knead, and move the items, paying special attention to areas like armpits to make sure the soap and water moves around those areas. After that, you can rinse them with a sprayer or by refilling the sink with clean water a couple of times and swishing the clothes around. To dry delicate items, first gently squeeze out as much water as you can, but don't twist or wring the garments. Then roll them up in a towel to get out any other water and lay flat to dry, either on a drying rack, another towel, or a flat moisture-resistant surface. Ideally one that allows airflow. Woolen and knit items should be blocked, which means gently squaring and setting it into its proper shape. So next, let's talk about ironing. Again, we want to reduce heat where possible. The same way that using heat on your hair can damage your hair over time, ironing can damage your fabrics. So check care labels. Only iron where needed and use the lowest heat setting you can for the fabric. It's also good to take preventative action to reduce wrinkles, so taking your clothes out of the machine when they're done instead of letting them sit in a crumpled pile can help a lot. And I also like to give my woven cotton and linen items a good shake before hanging to dry, which also really helps with wrinkles. Now, another important part of clothing care is properly storing your clothes, and especially out-of-season items that are going to be in storage for a while. Clothing should be folded or hung to reduce wrinkles, although never hang sweaters, and most knitwear is better folded instead of hung because hanging can cause them to stretch out. For clothing that is hung up, padded hangers are generally better to maintain the shoulder shape, and definitely avoid very thin wire hangers, which can cause creases. Also, if you have any garments with these hanging loops, use them. And when packing away garments, make sure you're only storing cleaned clothing. Avoid storing them in plastic bags, and don't leave clothing in dry cleaning bags. You want something that allows airflow. You also want to store your clothing somewhere that doesn't have extra moisture or high heat. Canvas boxes or fabric bags are often a good choice for storage because they allow some air. However, if your clothes are stored anywhere that you want to protect them from external things like moisture or bugs, then plastic bins are a better option, and even better if you put the garments in a fabric bag first and then into the plastic bin. But be sure the bins are fully dry, and maybe even add a moisture absorber like extra silica gel packets to ensure that there's no moisture inside the container. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there. Let me know if you'd be interested in fabric-specific clothing care tips, like for wool or silk, and also add any comments if there are any clothing care tips I missed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.